Hello, everyone. Welcome to our second webinar in our Thought Leadership series with our Business Psychology Department alumni. My name is Dr. Lanessa Rico. I'm so excited to welcome all of you for our second webinar event celebrating Women's History Month. Learning from some very inspiring, incredible, amazing, bold, and brilliant alumni here today. So before we begin, before I toss it over to Dr. Malayter for our wonderful chat this evening, I do want to remind everyone on our webinar that the webinar is being recorded. And so we'll share out the link with everyone who's attending today. If you can't catch everything, all of our conversation, we do have a Q&A chat open here as well. So feel free to add any of your questions into the Q&A box. And we do have about 15 minutes at the end that will open up to questions and answers. Okay, so with that, I will toss it over to Dr. Malayter. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Dr. Rico. And I have to tell you, this is going to be an amazing session because these women are phenomenal. So, and I am honored to lead it. So what I'm going to ask right now is I'm going to ask the panelists to introduce themselves. So who would like to begin?
Thanks, Dr. Malayter. I can start. Good evening, everyone. So wonderful to be here, Dr. Malayter. First of all, thank you so much for the invitation. Always thrilled to be able to come back and spend time with the Chicago school community. But hello, everyone. My name is Danica Turnbull. I'm the CHRO, Chief HR Officer at Healthcare Service Corporation. We are the parent company. We own and operate 5 Blue Cross Blue Shield plans. That is Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois, Montana, New Mexico, Oklahoma, and Texas. I have been with the company for 17 years. I actually started working at the company upon receiving my master's degree from the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. During my time working there, I went back to the Chicago School to receive my PhD, and I currently serve on the Board of Trustees for the Chicago School. So I'm very much entrenched with Chicago School and very much a cheerleader. So again, always glad to come back and give back and help out. So thank you, Dr. Malayter.
Great, thank you so much. Let's hear from another panelist.
I'll go ahead and go next. My name is Shayla Treadwell. I am a 2020 alum of Chicago School, so I got a chance to graduate in the middle of the pandemic, which was very, very interesting. I am the Vice President of Governance, Risk, and Compliance for ECS. ECS is a federal consulting firm and large-scale implementer for federal and commercial clients alike. So I get a chance to work with the federal government a lot. And I'm out here in the DMV, so I actually live in Maryland now. I will say that Chicago School really taught me a lot about myself going through my program, and my practice that I really work in is cybersecurity. But there's a lot of overlap between cybersecurity and organizational leadership and business psychology. And I'm looking forward to talking a little bit about that and how it helped me in my career.
Great,
Love it.
we're happy to have you. So
yes, absolutely. So I am Veronica Appleton. It's nice to meet everyone and to meet all of the attendees this evening. I serve as Vice President for Talent D&I for the marketing arm, which is an advertising agency within Omnicom Group. And I also teach. And so I teach courses within racial equity in business and intercultural communication. And most recently, I've just added another course, which is Women in Leadership for Yale University. I like to think of myself as a creative, spirited human. I love innovation. I love creativity. I love artwork, flowers. I'm just one of those kind of cuckoo kind of folks, but I love being able to connect with people. And much like Shayla, I want to give gratitude to the Chicago School for creating space for these conversations where we can just share a little bit of who we are, even outside of our careers, but then also the pathway that we forged as well. So nice to be with everyone today.
great, thank you. Dr. Poinsett?
I would say for me, one of the things that I work well, I work in the association space, so it's a nonprofit it's in the nonprofit industry. And the organization I work for is the Institute of Real Estate Management. And it is basically it's the profession, people who manage real estate properties, whether that's commercial or whether it's residential. It's a bit of a turn for me in terms of industry because of my background has largely been in healthcare. What I found really interesting, which is why I found the association space so interesting, is because it was one of the industries where it seemed to me that women were able to progress in their careers. My initial role when I came into the industry was I was an administrative assistant, but I saw that there were many opportunities within the association space that clear the way for women to be able to grow in their careers and in their profession. I have always been very intentional about where I wanted to see my career go. And I kind of knew very early on I wanted to run somebody's business if I didn't have my own. And to be in the CEO space. So the organization I'm currently with, I am the CEO and Executive Vice President for the Institute of Real Estate Management. Chicago School, I actually stumbled on because a friend of mine was talking about that she was interested in pursuing her PhD. And I looked at the University of Illinois, but when I went onto the website for Chicago School, it was exactly what I was looking for. And I signed up for the organizational leadership program that evening. And here we are today.
That's great, and happy to have you here. So the way that I have the questions organized today is really learning about how you grew in your positions, then we'll talk about your current position, and then the future. How can we get more women into these positions? So the first question I have for you is tell a little bit more about your story of rising up into your executive leadership role. So who would like to go first?
I'm happy to. It looks like my mic is the only one that's not muted, so I'm happy to go first. Wait, ask the question again, Dr. Malayter.
Oh, sure. You actually were telling a little bit of the story. So it's how did you get into the position that you're at? You know, what was your journey, and tell us your story.
Well, it's interesting because in the space that I work in, there are different aspects to the business, whether it's in the membership space or if it's in the magazine or publishing space. But what I did notice is that, you know, while my background was largely trained in business, every educational degree that I have was always focused on business. And I thought that was really important if I wanted to rise within the leadership ranks, is to understand just how business ebbs and flows, but also the skills as well as the critical thinking that needed to come along with each level of business as I rose. And what I did, and also even just managing people and having an understanding the psychology of managing people. So I was really thoughtful about what that would look like in order for me to be in a CEO role. I just knew I wanted to be in that role, but I had to think about what that would mean. So, you know, I did do finance classes. I did do psychology classes. I did look at, since governance and leadership is something I like to focus on, what that would look like. And one of the degrees I have is a master's degree in law, because I look at a lot of contracts. And I think it's important, while I don't want to practice law, I needed to understand the nuances of what it looked like to argue or to look at a situation from different angles. And that kind of gave me the skills. And when I came to Chicago School, it just added an additional layer, especially around DEI. That was something really important because you didn't see not only a lot of women, you didn't see a lot of women of color in the C-suite. So adapting to that and understanding what went into that was really important for my growth.
I'll go ahead and go next. So I did not have an elegant journey into this role at all. For me, I actually ended up in the digital marketing space for years. And I work with large organizations as a consultant, helping them with digital marketing. However, I ended up getting very, very sick, and I decided that I was going to take a break. At that point, when you're really, really sick, you kind of start to reflect on life a little bit, even though I was fairly young. And my hair was short, it was red, I had a nose ring. I was like, whatever, let's see what happens. And I got a phone call from Discover Financial and they were looking for someone to operate as chief of staff for their chief information security officer. And to this day, I very much love the guy who was my boss. He was an awesome man. And he was the ex Washington field office for the FBI's director, associate director for that. And I would never forget when I went in for my interview, he said, hey, he calls me kid to this day. And he said, hey, you know who that is on the wall? And I said, I look over and I'm like, yeah, that's President Obama. He's like, I can brief him. I brief him. Do you think you can brief me? And I said, yeah, I can do it. Like, you just want me to do PowerPoints and write your speaker notes. It's not a big deal, not a lot. And I did not know what I got myself into, and I fell into the world of cybersecurity. So I had to learn very, very quickly. And over time, I got really good at it. And in the technology world, we talk about people, processes, and technology. But sometimes in that world, you think about technology, processes, and people. And I loved focusing on the people aspect, simply because my master's is in organizational leadership as well. So I ended up enrolling into the Chicago School for the PhD program in org leadership because I wanted to learn more. And I started doing training and development in the cybersecurity space. And I was really, really fortunate to understand the human element, whether it was the adversary or our end users at work, and start using the concepts that I learned in class and things that I read about and started to apply it. And to this day, I work with another awesome guy who's my boss right now, the CIO of our company. And he reminds me that it's our job to do the common uncommonly well. And sometimes people forget that part. So rising through the ranks, I was just fortunate to have great leaderships in my life. I also was grateful that I was very, very focused on not just doing bare minimum. I wanted to do it to the best of my ability. So I ended up rising through the ranks that way. And now I do chair our diversity, equity, inclusion efforts at our company as well. And I own a small business where I do consultative work as well. So it's really paid off for me.
Well, Dr. Treadwell, we have a commonality there because part of my story in rising into the executive leadership ranks at my company started when I stepped into the role of the chief of staff, and I specifically was the chief of staff to the president of Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois, who at the time was a phenomenal female leader by the name of Karen Atwood. She has since retired from the organization, but as I stepped into that role, I was becoming her chief of staff after being her HR business partner, and so really had built a great relationship with Karen as her HR business partner, and then the opportunity to enter as her chief of staff took shape, and put my hat in the ring and interviewed for that job and got it. And from there, that was really the inflection point of my career because with her being such an amazing leader, her charge to me when I stepped into that role was, you are going to be everywhere that I am. And there are going to be times when you're going to be in places that I am not, right? So meaning you have to get in, understand the business, understand me, my point of view, right? At times where, I might have needed to be a proxy voice, establish myself an external presence in the community, and representing not only myself well, but representing her, representing the organization. So she really just wrapped arms and took me by the hand and said, you're in this role, you have a specific role to play as a chief of staff, but you're going to be in this role so that you can grow and learn the organization, right? It was the best opportunity to learn in all the ins and outs of the organization. As I mentioned, I've been with the company for 17 years. So as I entered that role, I already been with the company for a long time. I knew I knew a lot about the organization. I'd been in operations, been in different areas, but being on the front lines of a major corporate organization, at that time, fourth largest health insurer in the country, largest in the state of Illinois. I was chief of staff during the onset of the Affordable Care Act, which at that time took our business from one line of business to 3 lines of business. So to be in that role and be with the leader that really put me out front and supported me and let the organization know that she was supporting me and back that up was significant. And I'll tell you, it propelled me into executive leadership because that was the last role that I interviewed for within the organization. From there on, the roles that I got after that, those are roles that I was tapped for, and those are roles that involved increasing amounts of accountability and scope. So that certainly is the experience that I point to that really set me on the path.
Dr. Appleton, tell us a little bit about your journey.
Can you all hear me? Okay, good. You know, a part of my leadership journey is a little multifold. I've always thought of myself, again, as I introduced myself a few minutes ago, I've always seen myself as a super creative person. And so anytime that I'm creating something or developing something or chasing something, earning something, being involved in something, I want to create a space where I can be creative and innovative. And there's something to the effect of charting a path in an organization where you really do want to feel like you belong. And you can't see yourself if you don't see others that appear like you. And this is beyond race and gender. This is also rooted in identity. And these are the pathways that I've developed that make me ponder, even within my own organization today, the organization that I was a part of prior, do I see myself in the people that are leading an organization? And if I do I see that, hey, I could stay here for a few more years? And so what I love about all of what the women just shared is they have just different pathways. And we have one person that, you know, charted a path for 15 plus years within an organization. I don't have that type of history. Because of that creative trigger that I have, I say to myself, ooh, okay, it's 3 years. I think it's time to go. And I think it's probably just by nature of the industry that I'm in as well. So for anybody that's listening right now, you will find different identities within leadership. You'll find different identities of people that you work with day to day. And those are going to be the pathways that you kind of chart for yourself. We have another leader on the call that has been within an organization, CEO, has chartered that executive path. I'm not even there yet. Then we have another person that's within information security and cybersecurity. I mean, shut the front door, right? A Black woman in cybersecurity. And then you look at me, a woman in creative, talent, D&I, and trying to change the course of what that industry looks like. Today, it is still less than 7% Black. It is still today less than 12% Latino. Even across our Asian population within the industry, it is also less than 6%. So when I look at the path that I'm charting, it's going to look very different each and every single time. So the role that I sit in, it is multifold, but it is a lot of fun, and I do enjoy that. So hopefully what I just shared is also kind of relating to maybe some of the listeners right now. I know we have at least like 56 folks on the call that may have a super unique path that they've charted as well. And it may not look traditional, but that's intentional. It's intentional for it not to be a traditional or a set path. And so I love that. I love the depth of experience on this call because it does create a better way of folks that are listening to think about what real executive leadership looks like. There is no one way of seeing it. And I think that there's something really cool about that.
Thank you for telling me about the journey there. And I know the next question I had, you alluded to some of it a little, but just tell me briefly, were there, Dr. Treadwell said that she had to do the common, uncommonly well. Was that the term? Would anyone else like to state a little bit about what they did too, similar to that? Did you have any specific things that you did specifically as you were climbing up?
I could share. So a few things. I get asked this question a lot by, employees of the organization and my organization that are, you know, charting their paths now, right? So similar question to get asked, and the really the four things that I come back to all the time as I reflect on what were those actions, right? And at the time, did not realize just how much they were going to set me on the path to lead to where I'm at today, but really impactful as I look back. But the first is that I said yes to every opportunity offered to me, right? Every opportunity offered to me, I said yes to, even if it was an opportunity that I had not imagined for myself, or maybe even thought that I couldn't do it right out of the gate. Just said yes because someone saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, right? So it was don't block your blessing, so to speak. Someone is seeing someone's putting you forward, someone is stretching you. And so I said yes. And then even if I knew going in, I may not have known something, right? I quickly found out how to get it done, right? Or who to work with, who to go to get it done. And that leads me to number two. I mean, I was very self-reflective on the gaps in my knowledge, skills, and ability, right? And this is really where having, a psychology background. So my bachelor's in psychology, and so when I decided to go for my master's, that's why the Chicago School appealed to me, and of course had a great experience with my master's, which led me to go on to my PhD, of course. But understanding human psychology and being self-aware and self-reflective and being honest with yourself about where your gaps were, and that's what has helped me along the way as well. So understanding those gaps and what was going to get me to the next level, and so seeking out information, seeking out people that could help me fill in those gaps along the way. One of the things I would also say, I became a student of my company and my industry, right? So health insurance, healthcare, very complex, very dynamic industry. And so really, I knew early on if I was going to be successful in my organization or grow in my organization, I had to understand the organization. I had to understand how it worked, right? I had to understand my company, right? How it worked, right? And how you navigate the various different pieces, whether you're in shared services, whether you're in the plan, such as the, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois, whether you're, in a support function. But really becoming a student of the company, a student of the industry naturally differentiated me because I had what that established is credibility, right? So once people know that you're credible in the space that you're in, it gives them the opportunity to put you in different environments, because once you understand how the company works and how it operates, you can go anywhere and learn the functional tasks, right? Because then you've got the knowledge of how that connects to what's driving the organization forward and how you can contribute to the success and the objectives of the organization. And then finally, I would say, and I share this often, right? I sought out experiences and not title, right? I've never been a title-driven employee, a title-driven leader. It's about the experiences, right? You get experience, again, you differentiate yourself, you build that credibility. The next step, the title will come. But I entered the organization. It was all about what can I do once that light bulb went off for me that this was the company for me and aligned with my values, that had a strong purpose, a strong mission as the organization. I wanted to know what were those experiences that I needed to gather to make sure that I could continue to be successful and grow with the organization.
Can I comment on top of that, Dr. Malayter? I really appreciate what Dr. Turnbull mentioned about being a student of the company, but also a student of the industry. My whole background largely has been in healthcare. And now I find myself in the real estate space. So there's a lot of reading and there's a lot of conversations that I'm having with people that have been in the industry for a very long time. And I need to understand how the spokes in this wheel are connected, not only what my organization's connections is within the industry, but how other aspects of the industry and flow. I need to understand the regulatory environment by which my company's business operates, and the technology space. So I really echo the comment you made on the item number 3 in terms of what was important for your professional development and growth, because it encourages you not to be afraid to step into new spaces in new environments as a leader.
Great, thank you. Any other comments, or we can move forward? No? Okay, so now, so what's happening now in the current situation? I want to ask you some questions. How are you a leader right now? So what would you say are some of the most important leadership skills that you're demonstrating now or working with right now? So that you do use daily right now? Yeah, yes, right now. In the moment.
In the moment, Dr. Malayter, in the moment, I really do see myself as a manager slash mentor for my team. I have a 3-person team as a result of, some reductions, some layoffs. I did lose 2 people towards the end of the year, and managing through that, right? Like it's a real test to your leadership and your humanity when you lose members on your team, and how you handle it, and also how the other team members see you handle that. I am a huge community person, and anybody that knows me, they'll hear me say community often, they'll hear me say belonging often, and they'll hear me say inclusion very often, all of which have different meanings. Being a manager is someone who's able to listen with tactical empathy, right? If you have a team that is working it and doing projects for an organization, you're going to have to place yourself in their shoes, because they're in rooms where they are highly tactical, they are getting things done, they're checking things off the list, and you are meant to be that person that can be the strategy, someone that is able to drive the strategy, drive the team, and ensure that they're equipped with the resources that they need. In the same way, I also see myself as a mentor, someone that is also helping them develop their career. I remember I had 2 employees, one that was a young woman based in New York. I'm based in Chicago, of course. And she said this was the first time that someone ever talked to me as a manager and was concerned about what my next step was going to be. She never had that before. And in my mind, I said, oh, well, that is indeed something that does happen, where you have a manager that really doesn't support you. You got a manager that just sees you as kind of a, hey, get your work done, that's it. But I really see beyond what's in front of me. And I think that that's a huge quality that's necessary in order to be a good leader. You have a human that's in front of you, but they are capable of doing some extraordinary work. And when you motivate them to that point to do that work, they become even more extraordinary. So much to the point that I lost her on my team because she got another job. So I think that, in many ways, it could be deemed as, I lost another teammate like a year ago. Or it could be another instance when we do have some reductions, but I'm still motivating that team member, and I'm letting them know that, like, hey, we're letting you go right now, but I'm helping you find your next role. And so that's what I always do for many of my mentees and many of the employees that report to me. So I see those as just good qualities to be a leader, but also just to be a human.
What's interesting, when it comes down to leadership, I find that the more that I bring my authentic self to my work, the better. Of course, we all, in any executive role, we're outpaced by men. I don't know how many times more, but very much so, I'll put it that way. But I work in technology. So when you're looking at cybersecurity, IT, things of that nature, the room does not traditionally look like me at all. However, I've learned that in order to be a good leader, I have to say what I do what I say, and then show evidence for it. And there's been many, many studies that show that women tend to be up to 3 times more qualified than their male peers to have the same role. So it's not just enough for me to show up. I have to show up and show out all the time. And sometimes that can be a lot of pressure, especially as a woman. So when I'm thinking about leading, when I'm in rooms with very powerful people, Especially being a Black woman, I'm thinking about the timbre of my voice. I'm thinking about my hair. Is it okay this way? I'm thinking about what I say, how I say it. Do I have a dress on? Do I cross my ankles? There's a lot of things that are going on in your head when you're in those spaces, but I found that the more that I can bring my authentic self, the more that people can trust me. And working in cybersecurity, we're not the most forthcoming people because sometimes things you're not supposed to tell people, and especially working in the federal space, you're really not supposed to tell people what's going on, but you have to ensure that they trust you and they can see your ethic. So when it comes to leadership and when I'm leading my team or being an informal leader for those who don't report to me and things of that nature, one, I approach them as a person. I want to know how they're doing. If you're going to spend that much time with me every single day working, then we should at least try to like each other. You know what I mean? We have to at least try to build a relationship. So I do care about how their children are doing. I do care about if they have a loved one that's sick. And we try to support them in that fashion. I find that when people see that you actually care about them, they actually bring more to the table when they're working because they know that you have their back. I will say the second thing as a leader that's very critical is that I have to be trustworthy. Trust means everything. It really, really does. Because if they don't trust me, they're never going to trust the situation that I put them in, and they're always going to be on guard. So trust is another huge component. And I think lastly, from a leadership perspective, I can never stop learning. I remember I defended my dissertation and 3 months later got a certification. I can't stop learning. The minute I stop learning, I stop living, A, and B, I stopped making myself that credible person. So learning and being open to new ideas and understanding how the world is evolving. Dr. Pappas always talks about VUCA, and understanding that volatile and uncertain space that we live in every single day. Like no one saw COVID coming like this, but we had to maintain morale and keep people going. So you got to be open to change. And if you're not open, you're never going to be able to lead a team and get them through it. So those are the three most critical things for me.
You have to know that when I reached out to Dr. Treadwell, she was in a class when I reached out to her. So she's like, I'm sorry, I can't talk right now. I'm in a class. She's always learning. Were there other responses about leadership today in the moment that anyone wanted to respond to?
Yeah, I'll
yes.
just briefly add, Dr. Malayter, and I agree with everything that's been shared. You know, my approach has always been to be approachable, to be relatable, to be likable, but also not to be afraid to be disliked. And what I mean by that is, as a leader, your job is to make decisions and to be decisive. And your job is not to make sure that everyone is happy, right? That is impossible to do. As a leader, you're going to make decisions. People are very different, right? That's the human dynamic. So if your goal as a leader is to make decisions to where everyone is going to be happy, you're going to be miserable. The people around you are going to be miserable. But your focus and your charter is to make decisions that serve the masses and that serve the organization. And in my role, that serves my CEO. And as long as those decisions are not illegal, immoral, or unethical, right? My charter is to make decisions that support the organization. And sometimes people don't like that, right? And that's okay, right? That is the work of leaders. So again, but also, right? No one wants to intentionally be disliked, right? So, you know, as a leader, if you want people, you know, to follow you, you have to be trustworthy, you have to be inspirational. And that's where being approachable, being relatable, being likable comes in. So that's kind of what has been and I have to say that also comes from my doctoral dissertation was on emotional intelligence and servant leadership. So I have a really strong bent towards connecting with people and you know, having that strong leadership presence and supporting people. But that's always been my North Star.
And I will just add a few more thoughts on skills that I think are really important in the leadership space. Diplomacy is huge for me. I have to make sure that even when the decision is not favorable to all stakeholders, that I've used the best diplomacy I possibly can in terms of how messaging is communicated. I do pride myself on encouraging professional development and growth. So Dr. Appleton, I can relate to once a team member ends up leaving the organization, I feel that it's my job to help them and do that. I always think about the birds in their bird nest, and at some point they've got to fly. And so I enjoy being part of their growth. And if they're ready to take the next step in their professional development, then I feel like I've done my job, not only for them as an individual, but also for the environment that they're going to work in. They're ready to stretch that. What I also think is important is what I also find is that when people feel, or employees, or even if they're board members of the board, because I have a volunteer board, when they feel that you genuinely care about them as an individual and their growth professionally, you don't lose those relationships. And I think that that's really important, because I've had to reach out to some people that I've mentored and that I've coached along the way, because professionally they're in a place in their career where we are now colleagues in certain spaces. And I think that that to me is a testament to how important individual growth is. I also think that, like you, many of you, I enjoy learning, and I don't know how I can encourage professional growth if I'm not continuing to learn and grow. So for me, those have been really the biggest pieces for my role as I see it as an executive leader.
Thank you. I think that was the $1 million question about leadership, right? So, so this is an ever popular question of women. How do you balance life and work?
I don't, and I stopped trying a long time ago, right? So, I'm a wife, a mother, daughter, sister, a friend, a boss, a mentor. So some days work dominates, right? That dominates my life. And other days I'm intentional about prioritizing my family and me, quite frankly. And so it's for me, the balance was impossible. It was, on any given day, any given week, for me, it's about setting those priorities, right? But it's also about checking in, staying connected, communicating, right? Particularly on the personal side. But yeah, there are just days in the role that I'm in that work dominates. But I have a loving and supportive family, great friend base, and they understand you might go a time without, particularly friends getting together, but they understand the why, right? So communication is key. But yeah, I don't, I stopped reporting balance a long time ago. never happened.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because, and I'm so glad you were the first one to say it just doesn't happen. So I try really hard to at least twice a year to set expectations. So I don't have children, so it's just me and my husband. But I try at least twice a year where he knows that we have dedicated time next week, whether that's long weekends or whether it's a vacation that we can look forward to. We used to have date night. It would always be every Friday night. Well, that date night moves now based on my work schedule. So it may not be Friday, it may be Thursday, but we are intentional about if it's going to be the date night, and date night could simply be let's just order pizza and watch a movie or a series that we've been wanting to watch together. So I as Dr. Choko mentioned, we have to be really intentional. I don't know if I put the word balance in there, but I am very intentional about what that prioritization looks like, for at least for the family, because work sometimes it takes the majority of the time.
There's I think balance, it just looks so different for so many people, especially depending on where you are in your life, right? Like I don't have a family of my own, or I'm not married, but I do have a lot of responsibility. Especially when you take care of your family and people depend on you, and you depend on yourself, right? Even from a health perspective, Shayla talked about, kind of some of the struggles that she's had with her health, and the same here too. Being a woman and keeping your health a priority. I mean, that is like a whole nother role in and of itself. But you are holding many roles in many different ways. And so what I do, I love good TV, those good TV series. And then I love the, if I'm able to say this word, the trashy TV. I love the Housewives. I love the hip hop shows. I love all of the things that I probably shouldn't watch as Dr. Appleton. But I love it because it loosens up the mental strings that you are literally tailored to every single day. And I'm so grateful for the spaces that I'm in, but I have to show you all something because it's going to be a little TMI. I'm going to turn off my screen, but this brings me joy. Let me show you. My Christmas tree is still up. It's still up. So that's joy for me. And hopefully those of you that are listening right now, you find that inch of joy. But those ornaments, you have no idea. Those ornaments bring me joy. So you find your joy. And even if you put it in a chat, why don't folks that are listening right now, what brings you joy? What brings you joy? Is it food? Is it Christmas ornaments? Is it just hanging out with your friends? What brings you joy? You could put that in the chat. Shayla, what about you? What kind of brings you joy and stress relievers?
So, painting brings me a ton of joy,
Love that.
and playing the piano brings me joy. And similar to everyone else, balance is not real for me. I've just drifted into work-life integration. Like, unfortunately, my husband thinks that he's supposed to project manage our household, so we have a command center where we sit down and we look at everything and try to schedule it out. But I would say for me, I started reaching burnout. I want to say late last year, and I never knew how bad burnout could look until my body started shutting down when my mind wasn't. And I was like, hey, body, come on, what are you doing? And the body was like, I'm done. I don't care what you do, Shayla, I'm done. So I learned that in my work-life integration time, and when we're at the command center and everything's on a shared calendar, and that's how I run my life, I had to start scheduling vacation time. I have a tiny easel with a little canvas that I paint on in my office. So like if I get 15 minutes between a meeting, like I'll just like paint just a little bit. That brings me a ton of joy. Just like Veronica said, like the small things that bring me joy. I've learned that you got to figure out how to have your outlet. It doesn't look like balance anymore, but you squeeze it in when you can. Even if it's like getting up and doing yoga, that helps me a lot. I fell in love with yoga. I have a million plants in my house, and I think that I'm just raising plants everywhere. That brings me joy to just watch them grow. It's interesting how you start to find 5 minutes here, 15 minutes there, and that's what brings you the most joy. But it helps. You got to have something, because if you don't have anything, don't go to burnout. Burnout will mess up your whole life.
I love the joy conversation. Our chat is disabled, so I know we have a couple of Q&As coming in, and just to kind of shout them out a little. Some people said do it your own craft projects, because I'm not sure if everybody can see that. Going ahead and turning on your favorite playlist and dancing around in their apartment, and then yoga, golf, and that they love. Your Christmas tree is still up. So I think that that's fabulous. So yes, definitely about balance, or what is balance, but joy is so darn important. I love it. So we are getting to that point of 15 minutes left, but I'm going to take one question that I want to ask you, and then we'll open it up for people to add questions into the Q&A, so we get questions from who's on the webinar. So what would be your best advice to women aiming for executive leadership? I know you told us your story, but right now, what would you tell someone aiming for executive leadership?
I have two things. One, be intentional about why being in leadership, but the other is fully understand why you want to be in executive leadership. Because as you've heard from all of us, there's sacrifice that goes along with it. And sacrifice only, I don't mean just with family, but in terms of the amount of dedication that it requires. There just in, you know, the number of conversations that you may have in the course of a day with members of your team, and meetings come out of nowhere. You really have to understand why you want to be in the role. For me, it was because I really wanted to contribute to women and other individuals who wanted to grow professionally. So the title, while I have it, isn't the most important piece for me. I could literally spend every minute of my day in back-to-back meetings with either team members, board members, or what have you. And at the end of the day, 5 or 6 o'clock, that's when I'm going to work that the other piece of what my job is. So really understand the why, because if you're just purely looking for money and for power, that will burn out really quickly. You burn out on that really quickly.
Oh, Shayla, I saw you. You go first.
Sure, I'll keep it quick. One, to Dr. Poinset's point, know the responsibilities. Like, you kind of have to start embodying and seeing yourself in that role before you're placed in that role, so that it's not a jarring effect when you're going after something and people can't see you there. If you can't see yourself there and you're not bringing it all to the table, no one else can see that. So make sure that you understand that component of it. I was also saying there's nothing wrong with failing as long as you fail forward. Go ahead and take those risks, take those chances. To Dr. Turnbull's points earlier, she talked about how anytime someone gave her an opportunity, she took it. So it's okay to look at something and it not be on your path. You have no idea how that can open up a path to be where you are. I never in a million years thought I would be working in cybersecurity, let alone be an industry professional where people actually want to hear what I have to say. I never thought about that for myself. However, if I didn't get something right, I didn't have a problem failing forward. And you just pick yourself back up, you dust yourself off, and you keep on pushing. And I think the last thing is never stop learning. Never, ever, ever stop learning. The world evolves around us. There's so much more to grasp and learn. And when you're in executive positions, the one thing that nobody ever talks about, you're not a SME anymore. You're not just a subject matter expert. You have to make decisions with limited information, and you have to know business. You have to make business cases for everything. And it doesn't matter if you're in HR, cybersecurity, if you're in marketing, it doesn't matter. It's all about business. So go ahead and never stop learning and put yourself in those positions to gather that information.
What got you here won't get you there. And so one of the things I'll leave the group with Dr. Malayter is just, as you climb and advance in your careers, it's really important to remember that a title doesn't define or validate who you are. It just locates you, right? It tells people where your office is, right? Based on what title you have, your tenure in the organization, what area that you are a leader of. It simply locates you. How you treat people is the hallmark of leadership. Specifically, the question you should ask yourself, and the question I ask myself all the time, and if you talk to my team and the divisions that I've led, the question I ask myself are people better off for sharing time and space with you, right? Do you make people better, right? If I could share a quick story. So part of my background and my story, my leadership story, I'm a former college athlete. So I played basketball in college. I was a college scholarship athlete. And when college, the first opportunity you get to be a team captain is your junior year, right? You can only be a captain your junior or senior year or both. And in my case, I was the captain both my junior and senior year. And I'll never forget when I got called into my head coach's office, and he sat down and he said, "Manika, you've been elected by your coaches, myself, and your teammates to be a captain." And I looked at him, I said, "Coach Childers, I don't understand, right? I'm not the best player on the team. I'm not the fastest, I don't score the most points. I had a pretty good jump shot, I will say. I said, I'm not the best on the team." And he said, "It's not about you being the best." He said, "What we look at when we assign who are going to be our captains," and he pulled out a stat sheet, right? So I thought he was going to walked me through my stats. He didn't walk me through my stats. He walked me through the stats of my teammates. He said, I'm able to run the data and see how much your teammates excelled and did better when they were on the court with you. Right. So, I mean, it's an intricate algorithm, but it was about, you're a team captain as elected by your coaches and your team because you made people better when they were on the court with you. Right. So how do you support, how do you help advance and grow others? And you talk about another inflection point, right? That really set me off too, right? And understanding the importance of leadership, the importance of leading from behind and supporting others and not being about self. And more importantly, the purpose of a team, right? And how we're all better together. But that's what I leave you with, right? That a question of, are people better off for having shared time and space with you as a leader?
I love that point. That is huge. Like, what is your lasting moment with somebody? And not just like they feel inspired, but they really feel touched by you having a conversation with them, managing them, being in their lives, being a teammate with them, right? Like we also have to remember that the key to leadership is being able to follow. And if you cannot follow properly, you can't follow the direction that you've been given or the direction that you're even setting for yourself. Remember, we must model the behavior that we want to see. So if you're executing something on your team or a part of being a leader within your organization, people are looking. And so mirroring those behaviors are critical. The other piece that I want to share is that no one has your intersectionality but you. And we must identify that, right? This goes beyond your race, your gender, sexuality. It's really your makeup, who you are. No one has that intersectionality, and that's what you're able to bring to an organization. Knowing your numbers. I can't stress enough how important data and insights are. You're also talking to the folks that have gotten a PhD, so we know all too well about data. So I highly recommend that you know your numbers and familiarize yourself with data beyond your research, beyond your program, whether it's online, in person, whatever the case may be. Know your numbers. And then fourth and finally, be your own DJ Khaled. I think it is so important for people to be their own hype person. You know, like the saying that all the kids are saying now, it's like, I need somebody to gas me up. And so you must gas yourself up, okay? Like you must be your own DJ Khaled. Because let me tell you something, DJ Khaled, he motivates me to a whole nother level. And listen, I am huge on my faith. I am huge on listening to the things that my mom and my family shares with me. But DJ Khaled, listen, like we got a whole another relationship because he motivates me. So I want you to find that DJ Khaled in yourself so that you're able to hype yourself up. That you know that when any room that you enter in, any panel discussion that you join, you're going to offer something super unique. So be your own DJ Khaled. And I mean that with love. It is very, very important.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. And Dr. Appleton said something really quick, and it was a question in the chat. And that was a question. All of the panelists did attend the Chicago School on ground and in person. So, and that was the modality that they attended. So they attended once a month weekend classes. And then during the other weeks, they were attending online, doing discussion. So that's how the format modality worked. So they were able to meet in person and interact that way, and then also online in between those other weeks. So the other question that we have is, did you ever experience the feeling of imposter syndrome, and how did you deal with it?
I would love to answer that one. Every single day, I have these brainiacs around me that understand quantum mechanics and quantum physics and all this other stuff that's just so big. And it's really tough being in governance, risk, and compliance because I'm telling them the parameters in which they have to work. And sometimes it's like imposter syndrome wise, I feel like I am completely unqualified to tell you what algorithms you can write for AI and ML to be in your environment. But then I realized the way I cope with it is they may understand how to write these codes and tool sets to build AI and build, highly technical things. But I understand people far better than these folks. I understand how to keep an organization together. I understand how to build operating models on large scale. So the way that I handle it is I have to reflect and think about my strengths, because your strengths are highly important. And even in moments where you don't feel like you're good enough, trust me, you're good enough. You just got to think about what skill sets you have that others around you don't have, and how you can use those to further the mission.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Here's another question, and this is, what is something that you know now that you wish your younger self knew before starting your PhD in the executive journey?
Patience is critical. I don't have a lot of patience. I am the type of person that like to get things done. I don't know if that's because I'm an only child or what, but I love seeing things move and get done. And patience is required for a doctoral program. You have a thought in mind when you're going to finish, but your research has its own path. And depending on the output, depending on the life experiences, that can kind of change. That timeline will change. And I know I've had some peer classmates that finished right at that 3-year mark. I had some classmates that finished it multiple times. A part of being patient is also realizing that you are in your own competition. You are not in competition with anybody else, because the Chicago School wants you to succeed. So when you do succeed, when you do finish, it is on your own pace. And I think it's really important to remind yourself about that. The rigor is in place for a reason. But we must understand that if you're taking time, maybe your health kind of declines. Maybe you're changing jobs. Maybe you've just added a new partner to your life. You've added a new little human to your life. Whatever the case may be, maybe you lost someone. That's going to change the timeline just a little bit. And I had to process that over and over, especially when I lost my father, when I got sick personally, when my mom got sick, when I had to take on a different job. It's like you go through all these transitions and you don't realize that you must be patient with yourself. So that's what I highly recommend. What I know now, patience is really critical. Absolutely.
Thank you for that question and or that answer. I know that we have one more question. It was about how important mentors, sponsors, and allies are in your journey. And I know some people identified that. And did I cut you off, Dr. Turnbull? Or you had your mic on. So some people mentioned that right away, but how important were mentors, sponsors, and allies really quick?
Yeah.
Is our last question.
Yeah, I can answer really quickly. For me, sponsors were incredibly critical and beneficial, right? As I mentioned, I got to a certain point in my career and I was tapped, right, to do things. And sponsors are those people who talk about you when you're not in the room. So my focus was always what I want to make sure that people are saying the right things about me when I'm not in the room, right? So building a strong personal brand is critical. Being credible is critical, because you can't ask someone to be your sponsor. You can ask someone to be your coach. You can ask someone to be your mentor. You can't ask someone to be your sponsor, because there's high stakes for someone to be your sponsor. So that person has to see you, right? See you, experience you, and then be willing to put themselves on the line to talk about you when you're not in the room. So I've had the benefit of having really great sponsors over the years, and the onus was on me to make sure that I was positioning myself to make sure the things that were said when I weren't there were the things that I wanted to be said when I wasn't there. So the right things.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So kind of bring it back to Dr. Rico, but I just want to say thank you so much for your information, your knowledge, your wisdom. And after this hour, I'm a better leader because of you. So thank you so much.
well, if I unmute myself, you could also hear me. Being very grateful to all of you. I have lots of different notes. I know from each of you, I really pulled out some key quotes. I think what I most admire from our conversation today is what I saw and heard from your learning agility. So learning agility was a big takeaway for me, really aiming for excellence in everything you do and what that means. And I really enjoyed learning a little bit more about your leadership identities in this conversation. So I appreciate everyone. Thank you all for everyone that has listened to our webinar. We will be sharing the recording with everyone next week, along with any contact information, social media handles for our panelists. So thank you all. Happy Women's History Month and have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.